Hello everybody, welcome to Pagabo Live, or Pagabo Live as we're calling it. Normally it's a series of webinars that we have which promotes knowledge in the public sector. Today's is about driving efficiency through early developer engagement. So the format today is going to be a little bit similar to what we do on a webinar. We are going to be having a chat through with our guests on stage here, and then there'll be a nice opportunity to ask questions at the end. I'm expecting the pavilion to fill up because it's now started absolutely tipping it down outside. So just to go through a few introductions, my name's Tom. I'm normally the host of these online, but I'm now here in person, and yes, I do wear trousers every single time I do this, I promise. So I'm a director at UKREiiF Communications, and as it says there, I am conducting the conversation here between our expert guests, who will introduce themselves now.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, I'm John Parker, Development Director for Pagabo. So I'm basically the manager that looks after the development side of Pagabo, running the developer framework, but also helping clients with the journey through the framework for developments.
I'm Beth Bandonis. I'm Regional Managing Director for Lovell Partnerships in the East Midlands.
I'm Stuart Penn. I'm Regional Managing Director for Lovell Partnerships in the West Midlands, based out of Birmingham.
And I'm James Dunn, Director of Prosperity and Investment at Telford and Wrekin Council.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Good to meet you guys. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about the challenges basically faced by both the developers and local authorities when it comes to large-scale developments and how early engagement can help with that. In particular, we're going to hear about Telford and Wrekin's plans and how early engagement and working with Pagabo has helped them throughout the process. So we'd like to start these sessions with an audience poll. Normally these are done online, but now it's going to be done by a highly technical show of hands. If you could raise your hand if you're aware of the benefits of early developer engagement. If everybody raises their hand, we might as well stop the session now. But if everyone keeps their hand down, if they're not aware, we'll carry on talking. Brilliant, thank you. Nobody knows the benefits of early developer engagement. Of course, yes, excellent. Rego, we've got one hand up at the back, excellent. Brilliant, so we'll go through a few more of these sections as we get through the Q&A. But I'd like to start with the challenges that councils face with developments. James, you're going to be first up with that. You've kind of fallen under my spotlight to start off with. So it's easy to fall into the trap of criticising local authorities when it comes to their approach to development. But what are your kind of key challenges day to day? What keeps you up at night in terms of major developments?
I think in terms of challenges, obviously, not surprising, firstly resources. Obviously it's a real challenge to recruit staff and have the capability and capacity to deliver on projects. Obviously viability and cost is a massive challenge at the moment. Massive escalation in costs of projects as they've come through the process. That's been a massive challenge. And also, looking back with where government's been in terms of funding, again, we're continually being asked to submit full Green Book appraisals within, it feels like 24 hours, but it's probably about 4 weeks, but it's not very long to do a full Green Book appraisal. So, again, a real challenge. I think more wider in the local government sector, there's obviously challenges, and it varies between local authority, but you do have challenges around procurement, around legal. That alignment of those two departments with your regeneration department can vary significantly and can be really can delay things significantly. Also around the sort of delivery mechanisms as well, and how you're going to deliver that. It's it's really important to know how you want to deliver a project, and that's critical. But I think more wider, you've obviously seen today and yesterday and tomorrow, local authorities with massive amounts of aspiration, massive amounts of opportunity across the sector. But it's almost sometimes in local government people can be a bit blinded by the opportunity. There's so many, they're almost scared to make a decision on the site. And I think, without some external support when you need it, it can be a real challenge for them to sort of commit to a scheme, and then ultimately, therefore, it can make it hard to then, press the button and move forward, really.
So it's that moving from opportunity to action, really?
Absolutely.
Well, we know some people that can help with that. We'll get some insight now, actually, from a developer perspective. So obviously got Stuart and Beth, both from Lovell Partnerships, both sat to the east and west of the screen. That was done deliberately, maybe. You guys do some great work. We'll go to you first, Stuart, but then obviously Beth, feel free to jump in as and when. But, you guys do some great work bringing developments forward with local authorities. But what are some of your challenges that you find, both on your side and also working with local authorities? What are you finding is challenging for you?
I think for me, in terms of working with specifically with local authorities, and I'm not too sure I'd include present company in this, but
Would have been really awkward if you did.
no, well, I've just actually been in another panel with the leader of Telford Council and said some really positive things. So I'm not going to spoil it now. But I think there's a decisiveness issue with, and it comes back to James's sort of decision making. I think there's a decisiveness issue with a lot of local authorities and I don't know whether that, I'm not in the local authorities, so I'm not sure whether that comes from an inability to make a decision, an unwillingness to make a decision, whether it comes from a governance. I know that Telford Council's governance is very different, and it allows decision making at officer level. But I do think that decisiveness is a real problem, and I think there's a lot of issues around, like James said, lots of opportunities and lots of pipelines, but not really having the expertise to properly convert them. And know how to deal with some of the constraints in those opportunities, and know how to bring it forward and bring it to market. By the time that happens, lots of time has passed, and actually by the time it then hits the market, you're looking at a scheme that perhaps is either inefficient, it hasn't dealt with the constraints properly, or it's the timing is wrong, or the master plan is wrong, the outline permission is wrong. There's something normally, or all of the above maybe, but something normally. You can identify that actually if we'd have been involved 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago even, actually a lot of these things wouldn't be there. And we could have lent our expertise, because we don't run local authorities, newsflash. We don't run adult social care, we don't do any of those things. All we do is development. That's our expertise, and sometimes you think, well, there are a number of authorities out there that don't have that expertise. Well, buy it in, bring it in. We can be an extension to the resource that the councils don't have. We can add that capacity that they don't have, and expertise.
I think just to add as well, that disconnect that James spoke about between sort of procurement and legal, there's a lot of bureaucracy that we find, and it's sort of trying to kind of get through that as well. I think that's that's a real challenge.
Is there a bit of a trust issue at times? Is there a little bit of a kind of breakdown of, or not necessarily wanting a local authority wanting to trust a developer and put their kind of faith in them?
I'm going to go with that one, because there is absolutely a trust issue. You walk into a room and I often say to people, all I want to do is build houses. I've got no interest in in trying to work an angle. I just want to build houses. But there is a major trust issue with some authorities where, and some public sector bodies, where there's always a suspicion, I think, about what our real motives are, because of course you've got to have an ulterior motive. You can't just want to build a house. There's always a bit of a suspicion there, and a trust that, are we doing what's best for us, or are we doing what's best for the council, or are we doing what we should be doing, which is what's best for the project? Now, our view as a business, we're a partnership housing business, we do what's best for the project.
So that kind of all sort of leads into that early engagement angle that we're going to be talking about a little bit more later on. I think would be good to hear from you, James, is actually how a little bit more on Telford and Wrekin's sort of development plans and how this has kind of worked in practice, and we can also bring JP in shortly on that, on the Pagabo side of things. But it'd be good to hear from you in terms of what it is that you guys are doing in practice.
Yeah, so I suppose mix of both commercial and residential. So from a residential point of view, particularly, we have a wholly owned housing company, so we're the sole shareholder of New Place, which we established just over 10 years ago. We've delivered jointly with Lovells over the last 10 years. We've delivered now 500 units, which are now occupied. We have 1,500 of our residents living in them, and we have another over 300 units on site at the moment across 5 sites, live sites at the moment. Effectively, that is us entering into the market of PRS, and we are now the largest single private landlord in the borough of Telford. In addition to that, and through that, we've obviously, we have utilised the Pagabo frame as part of that process to a point, and what that's allowed us to do is to have that pipeline. I know it's obviously then allowed Lovells to establish that sort of subcontractor pipeline as well, which has obviously benefited both of us, frankly. And then in addition to that, we've obviously also delivered a wide range of sort of commercial schemes through our what we've called our growth fund. So we've invested directly into predominantly industrial units to both support jobs and growth across the borough.
JP, what have they been like to work with?
Good, very good, to be fair. Stuart's points about governance is a big thing in local authorities, and some local authorities have got so many layers of governance. You're going back to cabinet for approvals left, right, and centre. But what James has got is approvals and authority at officer level. So when they can move forward a scheme, they're engaging with Stuart very early on. So it's looking at the feasibility, what stacks up, what's not, and they can do that at pace and speed, and it gets a lot more transparency. They can shape the scheme, they can shape everything else. And what Stuart and Beth have said, it's about pipeline as well. They have that pipeline working with the client to add all the benefits of. So some local authorities have unfortunately got governance that really is slow, and it can be a 9-month approval process in some local authorities. So by the time you've done your feasibility, scoped it, got a viability scheme, by the time you go back to cabinet, you're resetting the clock and starting again. So they can move forward, which is good.
We'll go to the developer and sort of house builder side now, and just talk about the actual benefits of early developer engagement. So from your perspective, Beth, we'll start with you and then move to you, Stuart. But for you, what are the key benefits that you see from that?
Well, I think Stuart already kind of made the point that it allows us to kind of explore options, constraints early on, rather than trying to kind of on the back foot further down the line. We're able to engage with the right people at the right time, rather than again behind the curve. Cost efficiencies. We're able to provide value engineering and options that way.
And I think one of the things we've done with Telford a lot over the last decade or so is we've been able to look at viability, and we've been able to, I think in some of the early schemes that we did with the council, we didn't come in quite so early. We came in, I think, in a much more traditional way, having won a tender. But since then we've been able to sort of, I hate the phrase value engineering because it's crap, but we've been able to value engineer schemes. We've been able to look at the product and say, actually, what you're delivering here, we can redesign it, we can do it better, we can do it more efficient. You're not losing anything, but actually what you're gaining here is you're gaining various viability points. You're making the schemes better effectively. And also what it does for us, just selfishly as a developer, not so much for the council, although there is shared benefits, I think, it gives us a much longer sight line into the pipeline, so we can engage with supply chain more effectively. We can look at social value, and we have been looking at our social value offering fairly recently, because that you're not in town. You've got that visibility. You're in town for a number of projects perhaps, and the difference that can make in what we can offer through social value and training and community engagement and community consultation and all that sort of stuff is massively invaluable. We couldn't do quite that in the same way if it was rinse and repeat, and we were forever on the treadmill of tender, and we were coming in 3 months before a site start rather than 18 months or whatever it might be before a site start.
You've actually led me on to the next point. I was going to chat about social value, but James just wants to make a point on that.
Sorry, it was just about that early engagement around funding as well. So, I know I can probably perhaps a photo of one of the schemes later, but the fact that you can engage early means that you can then react to funding opportunities. So, where you have got a site that you are looking at, you've actually got far more information about it. So, on a Donington scheme, I think there's a photo later, is actually, the LEP at the time before the LEP was dissolved, but our local LEP came out with a call for sites, again in a very, very short period of time. But we had the ability to bid for that funding and, put in get money and put the money in for the new junctions into a large over 300 unit site immediately without having to because we were able to react quickly.
And one more point, sorry, Tom. I think for us working with the local authority, it should give. I hope it does. James might correct me here, but it should give the local authority confidence as well. That we're looking at schemes, and it should give a greater degree of confidence in both the scheme and how we deal with constraints, but also in terms of cost. To enable James's funded application, it should just give that greater degree of confidence that we're looking at it, we're using the expertise that we've got in those areas, and a much longer way out, we're giving those authorities a lot more confidence in what the outturn is going to be.
And just adding on to that as well, from a technical perspective, we've got within our business, the technical expertise that, we can provide, better options, and looking forward to the future, with future homes, Part L and things like that. We're spending quite a lot of time and, investment in looking at different ways of doing things and different ways of delivery. And I think, again, all of those things help.
So JP, what is Pagabo's role in all of this? How does Pagabo help with that early developer engagement?
So obviously what we've done, we've gone 3 years ago, set up a framework, developer framework. So gone to the pain of an OG process to get the developers on the framework, but structure the framework in such a way that allows them to engage directly. So we can run competitions every day of the week if we want to, but also the development world is about having the capability, the resources, and obviously that working relationship. So we are just basically the conduit. So, with James and the team, it's moving forward at next scheme, and you're engaging with covering off the governance. It gives them that compliance wrapper through the PCR to make sure that it's legal, and everything in there. We've got development agreements in there, so it's a very speedy process for James and team to move forward. Less legal costs. It's all been pre-approved. It's all there, and with James's governance he's put in place, thankfully I don't have to do cabinet reports and procurement papers left, right and centre, which is great for me, but far less time. But it's good, it's that speed. So we are the conduit to make that happen, and that structure there.
See, James, you're nodding away there. How has working with Pagabo helped you guys in terms of that compliance and getting everything moving forward at pace?
Yeah, it's done everything just described there, really. It's absolutely helped in terms of that process and being able to work at speed. And again, going back to the funding point, ultimately, it gives me confidence, but it also gives the funders like the West Midlands Combined Authority confidence that we are going to deliver on the timescales that are set for us. And obviously, outputs are obviously dictated in terms of when they need to be delivered, and ultimately, we have the confidence therefore to do it quickly and meet those targets.
Brilliant. I think we have some images of some of the schemes. So could you just talk us through a few of these, James, just so we could get some information on some of the schemes you've got here?
Yeah, so the main scheme you can see here is, so this is Sneds Hill, Wild Walk. So this is 2 phases of development. One was, I think, 70 odd units, and that was solely for new place as private rent. And then the second phase was effectively a development we did jointly with Walsall Housing Group. So they delivered the affordable element, and we delivered the balance. That's at Sneds Hill. The bottom left is Donington. So this is a former sort of open cast mine site. We've delivered we're delivering 329 units across different tenures. So we have 77 private sale units from Lovells. We have 66 new place private rented units, and the balance of 186 is affordable. That includes a new extra care facility, that includes dementia care facilities, as well as sort of more standard affordable rent units as well.
Excellent. Before we go into the Q&A, we've got the poll question. Obviously, we've chatted over some of the benefits now, and there weren't particularly many hands that went up to say they were aware of the benefits. After this short session, how many of you are now more aware of the benefits of early developer engagement? Please put your hands up. Eee! Excellent. I'm not sure how many that was, but that was more than 0 or the 1 that we had at the start. So I'm glad that we've managed to build some knowledge there. So any questions from the audience? I'm not sure if we'll have a roaming mic or not, but it's a small enough room for you to shout them up. Any questions at all? The man in the burgundy jacket, who I definitely didn't plant to ask a question if nobody put their hands up. I promise.
So I think it was mentioned at one point, the social value element in terms of early engagement. Would you be able to provide some examples of where that's, provided better outcomes on a local level?
Great question, that man.
Shall I take that one? So the latest scheme coming forward through Pagabo, through Telford and us is a scheme called Station Quarter. And if anyone was in the Midlands Engine tent a few moments ago, you'd know all about Station Quarter. And ahead of that, we kind of asked ourselves as a business a question around sort of social value and training and education and opportunities and all that sort of stuff, and asked ourselves, are we ticking boxes? and I felt as a business that we weren't quite ticking boxes. We were doing slightly better than that, but we could do better again. So the work that we've already done through Telford and Pagabo and got on site now, and Station Court's coming forward, and we've had the long run-in and long sight line into that. What that's enabled us to do is be confident enough to be able to put an initiative in place that's called Built by You, and it's targeting NEETs, they're not in education, employment or training people, so slightly older people, not school-age people, and trying to demonstrate to them exactly the breadth and scale of opportunity in the construction industry, in the development industry, and trying to get them through, it's a partnership with Telford College as well, and trying to get them through an education piece through the college, give them work experience on quite an intensive short-term placement. You're talking like maybe 3 to 4 week placement, but give them some work experience to sort of demonstrate to them what scale of opportunity there is. And the idea is then that people going through those cohorts, so the cohorts of maybe 5 to 10 people at a time, every couple of months, but people going through those cohorts, ultimately what we'd like to do is bring them on board at the Station Quarter project, to work on there as maybe as an apprentice or whatever it might be, but to try and get local people and people from the local area and local communities benefiting from the investment that both the council are making and we're making. Without the longer line of sight into these projects, we probably couldn't do that. It would be probably in the too difficult to do box.
Excellent, thank you very much. Hope that answered your question. Any other questions from the audience? Excellent. Well, I've got one. I hate to say it in the Pagabo Pavilion, but there are other frameworks out there. What is it that Pagabo does better than any others? Oh, Mike's coming out of his ears. What is it that Pagabo does better? What's the USP on this developer-led framework?
So, the developer framework's quite unique. So when you look at all the different tenure types and legal structures, it is the only one in the market. So it's quite unique. There are other frameworks which are more housing-led, but they haven't got the structure in there to look at different tenure types and different agreement types. And with that, you don't have a direct award mechanism. So it's quite unique in the structure we've put in place. It drives a lot of value, and about 80% of what we've done through the framework so far, which is 3.8 billion, is direct awards currently. So we've got a lot of competitions coming through, but a lot with the developments. A lot of local authorities have got great aspirations and are up against it on time, up against it on funding. So there is the issue of when they get funding, the timescales they've got to spend it. So having a direct award mechanism gives that facility to then say, I've got a scope, I need some assistance, I need to move forward at pace. So that's what the framework does in its entirety, really.
Excellent. Any other questions from the audience at all? I don't want to hog the mic, but I'm going to have to. James, one for you. So we talked earlier about sort of extending capacity within teams and using expertise from the likes of Lovell. Can you talk a little bit more about the areas in particular that you guys have as pinch points and where that is kind of helped out by working with partners like Lovell and Pagabo?
I think it's obviously the expertise, particularly on the housing side. So where we have sites identified for housing, is having that quick ability to pass the site over and ask for Lovell's assistance on looking at quantum viability. What do we need in terms of funding, and then linking then with our housing team around mix and mix of the affordable. What does that look like? Is it extra care? Is it older people accommodation as part of a scheme? So it's the expertise. I would say it's the technical expertise specifically for the housing element. From a contract point of view, from a procurement point of view. I think we're well versed from a council point of view. But I think ultimately it comes down to that sort of technical side for delivery, really.
And in terms of the way that you guys as house builders and developers have helped with this, does that sort of reflect the experience that you guys have had in the areas where you feel like local authorities have needed support?
Yeah, it does. And I just want to pick up on some of that James said about handing the site over. That might be the case, but actually what we shouldn't do then, once we've got to the site of Telford, we shouldn't, and just because we've got the early engagement that Pagabo allows us to do, what we shouldn't do then is see it as our site. No one working through the Pagabo framework in this early engagement should see the site as your site, just because we've had it handed to us by the council to do our thing with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden the council lose control. We've got control, ha ha ha, brilliant, we're going to do what we want. Actually, it's not about that. It's about meeting the goals and the objectives of the council, and using our expertise to get those goals and objectives out of the site, rather than taking control and doing something trying to do something to Telford that they just don't want.
And Beth, what's the kind of strength in the long-term relationships that you can build through this kind of approach? How does that benefit bringing sites forward at a better pace?
I mean, as far as sort of Telford's concerned, I think it's an understanding of what's required, not only in the local area, but for example, the house types. What from our experience of working there for so long, what do they need? What do they want? And just sort of again, pointing on the social value aspect, just an understanding, and what. For example, obviously Stuart spoke about the initiative with education in Telford. It's having that experience and knowledge.
Thank you very much. Just before we wrap up, any audience questions at all? Now that anyone's anything popped up for anybody? No? Okay, excellent. Right, well, thank you very much to everybody for coming in. It's been good to see you all. I'm sure I've just seen Noah floating past on his ark, actually, so you've done well to get out of the rain. Now you're here and now you've been scanned in as you get in the door, you are officially part of the Pagabo Live family. You'll get some emails, you'll get the updates about our next webinar, which is on the future of social value. It's taking place on Wednesday the 19th of June between 3 and 4. That will be online. I won't be just sat here in the Royal Armouries chatting to myself. We've also obviously got the opportunity, the guys are sticking around for a few more minutes after this if you'd like to come up and ask any questions that you didn't want to ask in front of everybody else. I know we're a big and scary audience. And if you are sticking around the pavilion, make sure you check out Loop for social value and SciPro for project and contract management. They are part of the Pagabo family, and it's really good to have that conversation. We've got the guys at the back who will wave. There we go. Look at them all around the outside edges. Have a chat with them for any of your kind of contract management and social value tracking needs. Okay, so that's been me. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you very much to you all, and enjoy the rest of your UKREiiF.